Afternoon. Don Parry here. I'm facilitating this afternoon's webinar as part of the Communities in Transition webinar series. This is webinar 6 of 8, 2 more, which we'll tell you about at the end of the presentation. You can go back and look through any of the previous webinars on the Clean Growth Choices website. Quite a few of them interact with each other, give you a bit more information. So we'll get into it. So today's webinar, I have with me Emma Menzies and Jade Pilgrim. We anticipate the webinar will take approximately 40 minutes and then 10 minutes Q&A. So we'll be definitely aiming to pull it out inside an hour. So first off, the first part of the webinar, I'll introduce Emma. I first met Emma probably 12 years ago when she helped the business I was working for do the EcoBiz program. And from that, it began my journey, which is where I've been able to do a few cool things too. But so I consider Emma one of my original mentors. So over to you, Emma.
Hi, thanks everyone, and thanks Don. So I was doing EcoBiz, so working with businesses for many years, helping them reduce their energy, water and waste. And now I'm working with communities and lots of schools. And there's just some amazing things that are happening out there. But sometimes it's really easy to feel despair when you hear about all the things that are happening. I mean, the recent UN report saying that 1 million species are on the verge of extinction. Bee species are declining. It's estimated that 70% of our fish population is gone and in crisis. 8 million tons of plastics entering our waterways every year. Oceans are warming, coral reefs are dying. We're producing more waste than ever before. Like Australia is the second highest producer of waste in the world. Just last month, 80,000 fires have been detected in the Amazon. And that's a record number since 2018. Record levels of deforestation worldwide. Almost 2/3 of Queensland has been declared in drought just this year. Microplastics are in the food chain. Research has shown that they've even reached the Arctic. Our world is getting colder, ice caps are melting, and climate change is accelerating much faster than was predicted. So, I mean, just saying all of that makes me feel depressed. It makes you feel, well, what can one person do? But there really is just so many things that we can do, and so many people that are doing really, really great stuff. So what I'm going to talk about is, again, I just said about Australia is the second highest producer of waste. So recycling is really great and it's really important, but we need to start thinking about when we do purchase things, do we really need it? Can we reuse it? And then at the end of its life, can it be recycled? 50% of the world's plastic goes into one-use items. I mean, this is just insane. 1 billion coffee cups are used in Australia, just Australia. And that's 2.7 million cups that are thrown out every day. And unfortunately, coffee cups and lids can't be recycled. And it's because they've got a special plastic liner on the inside. But there's this great Responsible Cafe, I've written the link there. And if you click on it, and it's all around Australia, if you go to certain cafes or restaurants, and they'll give you a discount if you take your reusable cup with you. And again, if you happen to have it, there's nothing in your town, you can actually go and ask a cafe if they want to be part of it. So it's a really great network that they've been doing. Bottled water, that's another one. And so much research has found that there isn't the stringent testing as tap water gets. So, and lots of times it's actually been found that it's worse for your teeth because of the pH levels. So bottled water costs approximately 2,000 times more than tap water. So what can we do about that? Take your reusable coffee cup, take your water bottle. When you are buying something, really try and buy the best quality that you can. And if you don't like your tap water, get a filter and ditch the bottled water. It's much cheaper for you and better for the environment. So food waste is something that we hear about lots, and this globally, about a third of all the food produced for humans is wasted. So in Australia, we're one of the worst. It's approximately 4 million tons of food waste that ends up going to landfill every year. And they say that the average home, the waste bin contains approximately 40% food waste. So the issue is that when we put food waste in landfill and we cover it up, it produces methane gas, which is about 21 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So we really need to be looking at ways that, first of all, we're not putting that waste into landfill, but we're not producing it in the first place. I mean, just thinking about the actual farmers that are producing that food, when you think about the water, the labor, the time, the fertilizers, just to produce it, not even thinking about the transport to get it there, and we're wasting about a third of it. So some really simple things that you can do is, I know this sounds a bit basic, but write a shopping list, plan your meals, use leftovers. If you actually Google this, it's incredible. There's whole recipe books that are made just for using leftovers. Don't cook too much and store in airtight containers, and treat expiration and sell-by dates just as guidelines. And lastly, with the food waste that you do produce, compost or worm farm it. I've got a little image just at the bottom there, and it's of OzHarvest. And they're a group that's all around Australia, in regional Australia too, and it's volunteers, and they are doing amazing stuff. They're actually going into lots of bakeries, restaurants, shops, Coles, Woolies, and they collect food that they say, can't be sold, and they end up then they're taking it to schools and they're taking it to other areas. So really doing some great stuff. This is when I cook a curry. Lots of times, like if I've got some coconut milk or coconut cream left, I'll end up just putting it in ice cubes and then freezing it, because otherwise it will get to the end of the week and I still haven't used it and it will just be a waste. So some really simple things for reducing food waste. I get so many questions about composting and worm farms, and people want to try it but they're not sure what's for them. And so really it has to be something that works for you. So if you don't have much space, maybe you live in an apartment or you're renting, and so your landlord won't let you put a compost or whatever it is. There's so many different options, so that again, you're actually using that as a resource and then you're putting it on your garden. So making compost is like making a cake. So use a recipe, and again, there's so many recipes out there. But worm castings are incredible. I mean, they contain so many beneficial bacteria and other organisms that are really essential to the soil, and they make the most amazing fertilizers. And worm castings, they make the soil more absorbent and they prevent the soil from completely drying out. And it also makes a fertilizer just by adding water. You can put that on your veggies or on your natives, anything. And so I've put in a link here, just if you do want to set up your own compost or your worm farm, your bokashi, but you're having trouble with it, there's some great little 2-minute videos just on that link there. But another thing is, if you've got a community garden nearby, join them and learn how to do it. I might go back to 1 second there. I'm working with lots of schools, and some schools, one school that I'm thinking of, but lots of the schools I work with are actually, they've got little kitchen caddies in each of the classrooms. They're collecting all of their food waste, and some of them are composting on site. Some of them, some teachers, they've actually got a farm that they take it all away. So they've had some really great financial savings as well, just by getting rid of their food waste. So that's something that lots of places can do, business or schools. A conscious consumer. I mean, this is something that we hear of a lot, but basically it's thinking about when you buy a product, where it comes from, how was it, how did it get to you, so the transport miles, all those kind of things. But by saying no to prepackaged foods, so like going to places that have bulk stores, so no packaging. I know lots of people take their own containers, but that's a bit of an effort. Whereas if it's a paper bag, you can just reuse it again and again and again. So really saying, I don't want excess packaging, and telling the supermarket or wherever you get it from that you really don't want it. Because again, being your voice as a consumer is really, really so important. And supermarkets are starting to listen to us. So buy biodegradable cleaners or make your own. Like, it's amazing, bicarb and vinegar, what it can actually do. Fast fashion, and this is something I don't know if you watched The War on Waste, but they did a whole couple of episodes on, and at the landfill, we end up, and well in Australia as well, we get so much fast fashion, so much clothes. They go to the op shop, but lots of times they're really cheaply made, and there's not anything that we can do with them. So really, again, kind of just thinking about what you're consuming, what you're buying. And clothes swaps have been happening. And again, this is not just in the city, this is all regional. So this could be at a friend's house or at a local hall. And it's literally, we have one every year here. But we also do it, I do it with some friends, where you end up, you can get about 10 friends, you all take some clothes you haven't worn in a few years, take it along, and then you do a swap. So that's a really good thing to do as well. Supporting local farmers, I can't say that one enough. I mean, we really need to think about, again, seasonally and supporting our farmers. Community lending libraries. These are something that have been popping up all over, again, in regional and cities. And lots of times they've maybe got the money as a startup, as a grant, and then they end up, you might pay like an annual subscription. Usually it's not that much. And then if you want to borrow a drill or you want to borrow a lawnmower, maybe once a month, you can actually go and book it out. So those are things that just normal community groups have set up, which is really, really great. Again, your vote as a consumer is so, so important. So palm oil, I mean, palm oil is found in about half of the products at the supermarket. So biscuits, cakes, soap, ice creams, shampoos, it's in everything. And the deforestation of the palm oil industry has caused so much deforestation. About 90% of the orangutan habitat has been destroyed in the last 20 years. So by you as a consumer saying, well, I don't support that. Tim Tam is a really good example. They were using palm oil and there was a huge campaign, people saying, well, I'm not going to support that product now that I know what it's doing. And that's the issue, is that sometimes we just don't even know that it is causing that problem. And now they have gone and changed over to sustainable palm oil. But it was a backlash from lots of people that actually stopped that. More than 70%, I think it might actually have increased to a bit more than that, of all seafood in Australia comes from overseas. And there's a really great little seafood app, and it's the Australia Seafood Sustainable Seafood Guide. You can just download that and you can actually see where your seafood is coming from, so that you know that it wasn't trawled in Thailand or wherever it comes from, that it is sustainable. Another one is reduce your meat and dairy products. It's another way to reduce your impact. Approximately 14.5% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock. So the same as the transport sector. But there's some really interesting stuff that's been happening recently in the last few years, is the edible insects business. And I put a little article that just came out the other day, and it's really booming, and experts really predict a big export in this. So it's going to be interesting to watch that one. I'm not sure if many of you have heard of microbeads. So basically, they're tiny little plastics that are hidden in cosmetics. We always used to use natural ones, but it's cheaper, and so they've been using microbeads. And basically, they're in suntan lotion, they're in some toothpaste, and they're in facial washes. And after you've washed your face, it goes down the sink, goes to the sewage treatment, they're too small to be filtered out. And so they end up going out into our oceans. So many countries, and this is a map here that shows so many of the countries that have actually started to ban them. Australia ended up, they said, we're not going to ban them, we're going to do a voluntary, but there's still a large percentage of companies that are still using them. So you can actually go to that link there, beatthemicrobead.org, and you'll actually be able to see what products in what countries are still there. I've had lots of school kids that have ended up, they've email to the company and say, can you please remove them? So all of those things really do make a difference. But basically, the first one is don't buy those products. And this is the transport. About 15% of our emissions globally, well, in Australia, come from cars. So I know that in a regional area, I'm in a kind of regional area, and it's really hard to get public transport. But I love these two images, and so I just put it in there because I thought it was good. Just seeing those 40 cars and then that one bus, it's a pretty dramatic one. And to get public transport or to cycle or to walk, it is more of an effort. You have to be more organized. But cycling or walking to work, you know, just one day a week, or dropping your kids off at the school, maybe half a kilometre away and walking, can stop that congestion. But also, I think one of the really important parts is your health. It makes you feel better, and you're getting some exercise as well, but also saving some money on petrol and reducing emissions. There's a great little link there that if you maybe are you wanting to carpool, shows you exactly how you can set it up or how you can do it with some friends. Dawn was actually telling me yesterday about a group of women in regional areas where they end up, they go, right, we're going to go down to the we're going to the shops on this day, and we're going to get a bus and organize it rather than getting 30 or 40 cars all going down. You know, so those kind of things. Divestment is something that we've heard for the last few years, but still when I speak to people and community groups, they're not exactly sure what it is. But basically, everyone in Australia, we're lucky we get superannuation. But sometimes we don't think about where our money is actually being invested. And so lots of the traditional superannuation companies invest in fossil fuels such as mining, coal seam gas, logging low growth forests, tobacco industry, uranium mining, gambling, and that's just a few of the things that they invest in. But this is really interesting. It's estimated that the total funds under management in responsible investment portfolios in Australia totaled 622 billion assets as of, and this is December 2016, compared to just 13.9 billion in 2002. So we ended up, you can see there's been a huge growth of that. And also research has shown that for the past 20 years, responsible investments compared to the mainstream options like the ASX 200 or a balanced portfolio have pretty much outperformed every year. So the real question is, ask your super company, what's your money investing in? And maybe look at some alternatives to someone else. And again, ask your bank, what's your money investing in? So this is my last slide. And these are some things which I'm sure you've heard lots of times. But we just got our energy bill a couple of weeks ago, and they keep going up. So what can you do to reduce those? Change, if you've still got downlights in your house, change them to LEDs. You'll really notice the difference. Insulate your house to keep it warmer and to keep it cooler, more importantly for us in Queensland. Put solar on if you can afford it. It has gone down dramatically in the last 10 years. When buying appliances, check for that energy rating. Try and get the most efficient one as possible, because in the long run, it's going to save you money and it's going to last for longer. Planting trees. So research shows that when trees are cleared, the area starts to experience drought. And that's because trees hold water, they prevent flooding, they assist in recharging underwater aquifers, and they maintain water vapor in the atmosphere, increasing the opportunity for rainfall. They produce oxygen, they increase biodiversity, provide habitat and shade. So all of those things. So that's something that we need to be doing more of. And this last one, buy recycled products. It's really good that we're recycling, but if we don't actually purchase those products like recycled toilet paper, recycled paper, then we're not helping be part of the circular economy. And I know Jane's going to talk a little bit about that as well. But the more that we can do that then, and that's something that Australia is working towards right now. So this is just a bit of a snapshot of everything that I just talked about. The only other thing that I just wanted to say was talk about this with your family and friends, because lots of times people don't know about lots of the stuff. They don't know about the palm oil. They don't know about the microbeads. They don't know how they can set up their compost. But also this movie, 2040, if you haven't seen it, really is done so well, and it's really, really inspirational. You'll leave feeling hopeful, and you'll see some really fabulous stuff that's happening around the world, in Australia and around the world. So it's great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Emma. Really appreciate it. Lots of information there. Don't feel overwhelmed by all that information, because this webinar is going up on the Clean Growth Choices website, so you can review it as many times, share it with a friend, watch it with someone else. So didn't have to get it all today. It's a great start though. So much. Thanks, Emma. We just change over to Jade's slides now. Now, Jade's going to have her talk a little focus for you on how to build groups. It's one thing to be a champion of a cause. It's much easier if you can build a network to help you. So that'll be included in some of Jade's slides. So thanks, Jade. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Don, and thanks, Emma, as well. So today I wanted to talk to you about how you as an individual can help to make some noise in this problem of how do we help the environment. So to do that, I'm going to sort of talk about passion projects, how you can help discover your own, and how through that you can find your voice, make it heard by leveraging that through social media, and how that can sort of start to get others on board and form community, which can then also have an even bigger impact in a global community to help save the environment. So as Emma mentioned, there are so many different things that we can do to really positive impact in the environment. And I think the more you start to research that yourself, the more overwhelming it can be. Even though it's positive information, you can sort of go down little rabbit holes of researching the problem and getting sort of down about how bad it is and the scale of the issue as well. So just to make it really simple, I like to break it into two categories. So asking yourself, where do I start? And the two categories being working within the here and now and working towards the bigger goals. So your here and now projects, they're the sort of things that you can start to adopt in your home, work, school, or your third place environment. So perhaps your community groups, which I know Don's going to talk about. So maybe at your church or your school, your sporting communities. Your bigger goals, Emma also mentioned, so maybe switching to solar, investing in electric cars, that kind of thing. A really great example that I'm really passionate about is working within the here and now in recycling. Now, as Emma mentioned, recycling isn't the answer. If we have a look at our relationship with waste from the waste pyramid hierarchy perspective, recycling is actually quite low down on the scale of what is good for our sustainability and environment. So choosing to refuse, reduce, reuse, and even redesign products is always going to be a better option than recycling. But if you're looking at something to get done today and also to involve your community, recycling is really not a bad place to start. So if we look at that from another perspective, so the recycling model, it's slightly better than a linear economy where we take, make, use, and waste. So the recycling economy, we're then taking, making, use, wasting, and recycling that product back into the stream, perhaps in a different model, but most likely in the same sort of recycling stream. Obviously, the better it is, the better it's going to be for the environment. So if you have a look at the circular economy there, multiple streams there. So take, make, use, repair, reuse, recycle, return. It's just this continuous multifaceted economy. Now, if that just sounds a little bit confusing and you've not heard of it before, or if you have, but you just want to know a little bit more about how you can get involved in contributing to a circular economy, I do recommend that you check out the webinar by Ashley Morris. So another one of the Clean Growth Choices webinars that we've had in the series just earlier on. So if you haven't checked that out already, I do recommend you do, because it's really helpful and handy. So before I move on to talking a little bit more about recycling in a non-traditional sense, which does have a part in the circular economy, I just wanted to mention this. So moving forward into non-traditional recycling streams, or as I like to call them, alternative streams, we have a great example in the Precious Plastic Project. It's a bit of a tongue tie. I'm probably going to say it like that a few times, so apologies if I do. So a really great example of this alternative stream recycling project is out of the Netherlands. So it just started with the one guy who had this vision for his final year thesis project in his design studies to really tackle and challenge the issue that we have with plastic not being recycled and just plastic waste that we have. So he wanted to design some machinery that would shred, melt, extrude and form plastic things. So items, anything that you could imagine these products or these machines could then make. So either through, you may have heard of 3D printing, that sort of thing, similar to that, but mostly through an injection molding form. So the guy's name is Dave Hackens. He's a design student. He was never ever a machinery builder or an engineer or a mechanic even. So he knew that if this project were to really take off, that he would need to have some help. So he put his hand up for a bit of collaboration and put the word out onto social media, asking for anybody who knew anything about this space to join him in making this a better project for other people to use. Because at the end of the day, yes, it was a thesis project, but his global vision was for it to be a community project that anybody could use. So once the machinery developed, Dave released the blueprints for the machinery and made them open source documents on a website. So anybody in the world who had access to a computer and internet and possibly even a printer could download these blueprints for the machinery and start recycling plastic in the home environment or community environment. So as the machines got better, the blueprints got better, more people got involved. Initially, it was just the two people who started making the machines and recycling at a home level. But fast forward to today, and it's actually quite a successful global community of people who are making this sort of alternative recycled stream products. So on the left here on this slide, we have a bit of a screen grab from the website. So you can see on the website, there's links to the community, some tutorials, access to blueprints. The project is currently on developing version 4 of the machinery. So it's been going for some time and the machines are just getting better. You can customize them so that they work for you, but essentially it's the same sort of blueprints. There's also a link, really exciting, to a bazaar, which is like a marketplace where people can sell and buy and I guess swap some products that they have made from the precious plastic machinery themselves. Some people on there are also selling the machines. So if you don't have access to a machine in your local community or you don't know how to build one yourself, you can always just go out and buy one if they're close enough to you. One of my favourite things on the website is actually the map, and there's a screen grab on the right of the page here from the Queensland results of the precious plastic community. So these are people who are actively right now involved in the precious plastic community, and you can search for anywhere in the world, any community, any city, town. In this case, I've just grabbed a state, and then filter it down between who has an available workshop, who has access to a machine or could build one, and who there on the map in your community wants to get started. For example, we have Hefts. So Hefts is based in Cape York and wants to get started making some 3D printing filament from marine debris. So I'm assuming that's plastic that's washed up on the Cape that Hefts has found and wants to sort of put it to a better use and is looking for anybody to get involved in the community. So really recommend checking it out. It's pretty cool. We're going to park Precious Plastic Project here because I want to just talk about them a little bit more and into how they've leveraged this project through use of social media. But before I get to that, I want to talk about how you can build your own passion project. I understand that recycling, and especially recycling plastic, isn't everybody's exciting thing. For me, I personally love it. But yeah, so if you're sitting there thinking, oh, you're kind of losing me talking about plastic all the time, I just thought I'd cut to this. So if you think, oh, I want to get involved, I want to do something, but I don't know what or how I could get involved, start by asking yourself these 5 questions. So asking, what is it that you want to protect? So best way to answer this one is, if something that you love suddenly disappeared, what would that be? If you wanted to tell your grandkids about something, what would it be? What do you really want to protect and nurture so that it's there in years to come for everyone to see and experience like you have? What skills do you already have that you might be able to harness to make the world a better place? For example, are you a deep sea diver who might be able to volunteer in a recovery missions, getting some like netting out of some of the oceans to avoid entanglement for wildlife? Just an example. What do you do now that could be done better? So I think that I'm pretty good with my recycling or even waste reduction, that sort of thing. But I participated in Plastic Free July, which was a pretty eye-opening experience for me. I thought I was doing quite well until you try to cut something out completely, and then you're sort of exposed to how much or how big the problem is that you're also participating in. So that really led me to what I could learn. So what could you learn? What could you be doing better? Those kind of go hand in hand, but also while you're out there learning, you're talking to people, and what could they learn from you? The easiest to answer of all of these questions, I find, is what gets an emotional response out of you? What is it that you see in your environment, in your community, or that you hear about that you either think, I just love that someone's doing something about that, or geez, it really grinds my gears when I hear that that's going on. So by asking yourself these 5 questions, I think it kind of narrows down that scope as to where do I start, how could I build a passion project, and potentially get other people involved as well. So once you've discovered that, it's time to elevate your project. So by getting social, you can really have a bigger impact. So congrats, you've realised your passion project. Start recording it. This can be as simple as maybe writing a diary entry, writing a blog if you don't mind doing that sort of thing, even taking pictures. All of those things are going to help you to share your story when you find that you are ready to elevate your project by going on social media platforms, that sort of thing, to really get your message out there. And by doing that, you're going to get others on board and potentially open up that network to start collaborating with others to develop your project in ways that you perhaps hadn't even thought of or realised. So it's pretty exciting. Now, as promised, we're going to get back to Precious Plastic to see how they kind of evolved by adding social media to their platform. So they've had a really good flow-on effect by doing that. So we know Precious Plastic, there it is again. We know what they're doing, we like what they're doing, and that's great. So they started talking about what they're doing on social media. By doing so, they've picked up heaps of different people in the community who have really taken on board the Precious Plastic program. One such group was the Sea Monkey Project. So Sea Monkey Project is a family of 4 from Australia who in 2014 left home, packed up ship, literally, and took off on a yacht and started sailing around and living on their yacht, and still are. So they're currently in Asia, just going around on their yacht and connecting with communities, island communities. So they found the Precious Plastic Project, downloaded the blueprints, started making their own machines, and made a customized 3-in-1 shredder, extruder, and injector to mold plastic items. As they were traveling, they came across a group in Malaysia, so the Juara Turtle Project, who have multiple different conservation projects, but also have a really great project with turtle conservation. So the Sea Monkey Project visited them and actually set up a 3-in-1 precious plastic machine so that the community could use that to convert marine plastic that washed up on the beaches, that sort of thing, to make new recycled plastic turtles. And so the plastic turtles that they were making into necklaces or other items such as bowls and plates, cups, that sort of thing, are being sold locally, and that money is then going back into the whole education and conservation projects as well. So really exciting stuff. And really I just think this is a great example of how one person's dream or one person's vision or passion project really elevated just by adding it to a social media platform, and has had this fantastic global impact, which has been a positive impact on the community. Obviously getting plastic off of the beaches, out of the sea, that sort of thing, generating an income. It's just a great little model. So a bit of an example there. Bit of a home example. This is an insight to my own ventures. So I realised my own passion project one day when I was on a beach, and just happened to look down and notice all this microplastic. So I went about filling my pockets with as much plastic as I could find, and started getting really upset about it, and went home and sort of started counting the amount of plastic, and then the scale of the problem really hit me, and it bugged me. And I thought, hang on, I was the only person on the beach doing something about this. This must be on every beach. So I decided that I would clean beaches more often, and I would document that through my own social media platform as well. I chose Instagram because it's less of a focus on getting the words out there. You can still share your message, but it doesn't have to be in the sense of a blog. It can just be one simple image or a few clustered photos of what you were doing on that day, and gives you enough room to sort of reach people and get your message across as well. So that's me. I set up Miss Eco Warrior. And just one of my more recent photos for you to give a bit of an insight into what it's like. So this image here in the middle is a cropped version of one of my uploads. It's a collage of thousands of pieces of plastic that I found off of a beach off of the coast of Queensland, on one beach, on one clean. And so that particular image, if you have a look here, top left corner, generated 53 likes, 7 comments, and 6 people actually saved this photo to show a friend maybe, or even just file it into a category of things that inspired them, that sort of thing. If you have a look at down to discovery, so 406 people actually were reached, so accounts were reached by this image, and the image was seen a total of 528 times. If you have a look at impressions, so that's your total viewing number. Now, the important thing I wanted to show you here is I'm actually accessing this data because I've set up my page as a business, my account as a business. Obviously, it isn't a business, it's more of a personal blog for me. You can set it up as a small business, however you like, personal blog, that's fine. But by having a business account, you're getting these insights or these stats behind your posts as well. The most important thing for me is the figure here. So 88% of the people that this image reached were people who did not follow my account, which is fine. To me, I think the amount of likes and the amount of followers you have doesn't really determine how wide your following is. It's more about who you're reaching and how many people you're reaching, because the way I see it is your reach is a reflection of your impact as well. So, and people that you could potentially have a positive influence on. So yeah, don't get too caught up in, oh, I only got 2 likes on this one thing. Don't be deterred, keep going, keep doing it for you. And hopefully you'll find other people along the way as you go. So just some quick guidelines for you for social media. There are a lot of individuals and organisations out there who are trying to achieve these really great objectives, often very similar or even the same. So it's really hard to sort of cut through the noise if you are going for that wide impact. The best way I can think for you to cut through the noise that I found is to be genuine, to be honest and be relatable. The more you can be honest, relatable and genuine in your content, the more trust you'll build with your followers. And that's going to add value to their lives as well, because at the end of the day, social media is an opt-in, opt-out. Nobody has to be looking at what you're posting, but give them a reason to come back, connect with them on that level that does add value to them by being relatable, and you will sort of see that network grow. As I mentioned before, your following is not determined by your amount of followers. People come and go and they'll listen to you if they want. don't get caught up in the stats too much. I only do it just to monitor my own progress, but by all means, you can just set up a public page without going into all the stats if that's more comfortable for you. And everything in moderation. I can't stress this enough. Don't forget about screen time. Keep the balance between your green time and your screen time. There's a fine line between being committed to the cause and wanting to use social media as a platform to get your projects out there, but yeah, don't let it be a detriment to your own health and your own personal balance as well. It can be a really great place, but it can also have its negatives to it. So just try and keep that balance and you'll have a better experience. So that's pretty much my presentation. Thanks for listening. I've got some links to projects here. So on your recycling, there's a few I didn't mention. So if you're looking at alternative streams that are closer to home or just not interested in the plastic side of things, that's fine. There's the bread tags for wheelchairs and the plastic lids for prosthetic aids. I really recommend you look into those, or something a little bit closer to home again, oral care products or dishwashing products can be recycled through alternative streams such as TerraCycle. So really encourage you to check those out in your own time as well. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks heaps, Jade. That was really interesting. I've got just 2 slides to show you before we go to questions, but start thinking of your questions now. Down on the bottom of your page, you can see Q&A. You can enter questions there. So it has been my experience over the last 12 years or so that what happens that creates change and sustainable change is passionate people with a plan. Running around being passionate doesn't do it, and having a plan on its own doesn't do it. It's that combination of passion and plan. So what does a plan need to have? Well, it needs to have good baseline data. If you don't know where you're starting from, then you don't know if you've improved. So you know, where are we now is a really important thing to know. What resources do you have and what do you need? Design and implement your plan, run the event, then remeasure, report, reward. One of my favorite quotes of all times is winners have parties, losers have meetings. So after you've run an event or something like that, have a little celebration. Congratulate your little team or yourself. Just don't go back into the hard work again. You'd be surprised where support would come from once you get your story out there, and all of a sudden, from you being a champion of a particular cause, you build a little champion team. So right from the start with the plan, if you know how you're going to measure it, how you're going to market it, how you're going to evaluate it, and then it's a circular thing too. You just go around and do it all again, and that's how I found it works. Jade, would you go back to that? Was it the previous? Oh no, to the previous one. Yeah. So one of the things we promised you in this webinar is we'd help you to save money, and Emma and Jade have mentioned some things, but just some basics. And I often feel that this feels like my grandmother. Like there's a lot of these things that we can do right now, we can do today, are just like our grandmothers used to do. Turn things off when not in use. I can tell you that in an average house that hasn't focused on this, there's at least a 10% saving in your electricity by turning things off when you're not using them. Setting air conditioners at a reasonable temperature, using natural breezes on days that aren't going to be too hot, keeping that sun off your western wall in summer by planting trees or putting up a shade cloth, shutting doors to rooms that you don't need to be cooled with your air conditioner or heated by your heater. Emma mentioned it too, changing lights to low energy lighting. When you purchase new electrical appliances, base it on their energy and water efficiency, their star rating. Always check for water leaks, deal with them straight away. And I guess, like me, I'm on tanks, so I really care about a water leak. It's funny, when we're on town water, we don't seem to care about them. Well, I can suggest that it's worth it financially and to protect the amount of water our community has. We've recently seen over the last 6 to 8 months the return of deposits on drink containers. I did that myself for a little while. Didn't have a lot of volume, and so it wasn't that exciting to go into the into the thing. So what I did is one of our local clubs in town here has a 1 ton bulker bag now, and we all just drop our containers into that, and that club makes about $200 a month now to help its cause, from community members who weren't interested in getting their $8 by going in themselves. And of course, wait till your dishwasher or your washing machine's full before you use it. There's lots of little simple things, and you probably said, look, Don, I knew all those. Well, that's great. I wonder if we're doing them. You can see that thing I talk about, a kids project. I did this in a factory once, and then they took it home and did it with their children. What it was is they show their children their power bill and said, next quarter, anything under that, and you get to have that money as a family outing. And that primary school kid who really wants that family outing becomes the policeman of the power in the house. And I've seen 20-25% type power knocked off by the little primary school. And if he's got a teenage sister, he will drive her nuts to get all those standby lights off in the bedroom and all those sorts of things. So just giving the kids a project. Now you say to me, that didn't save me any money. Well, you're probably up for the family trip anyway, but the big thing is you're teaching your children to turn things off, and that's a lifelong lesson that can save them a lot of money into their future. So can we go to the slide, Jade? So we must have done a good job. So far we've got no questions there. Any reflections, Emma, or Jade, on what you've heard?
Oh, that was great. No, I'm trying to think of some.
Okay, well, please put a question in now, or we'll wrap this up. At the end of this webinar, there's a chance for you, it says continue. If you continue, you can fill out a little survey for us, and if you do that, that'll be very much appreciated, so that we can plan these to make them even better in the future. So, so at the end of the webinar, please press continue if you've got a couple of minutes. I hope we've made your lunch hour more interesting today with this presentation. And Jade, could you go to the next slide, please?
Oh, we're just going to say we do have one question that's come through. So we've been to challenge people to share this webinar on social media. So a really great link to what I was saying about raising your voice and having it heard. So if you like what you've seen today, I guess perhaps you could share it on your own personal, or if you feel game, or on your business page if you have your own business and you thought what we said was inspiring or motivational or educational in any way. I guess we challenge you to share it. So last slide for you, Don. Yeah,
so they're the two upcoming webinars, the last two in the series, 7 and 8. There's their dates and on the topics. See, next week's about profiting from eco-efficiency in a business sense, or in your school, and it relates closely to some of the things we talked about today. So that will sort of further enhance your knowledge. So thank you for listening. We've really appreciated your time today, and hope to hear you through the survey or through future webinars. Thank you.
Thanks.